Hello and welcome to World Talks. As Europe is bracing itself and rearming in an unprecedented way, I'm Anna Kalczyńska. Good morning. Following the leaders' decision on massive increase in defense spending, the EU economic and finance ministers are discussing in Brussels today on reducing administrative burdens, taxing multinational companies and imposing additional sanctions on Russia over its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Lithuania goes as far as to proposing to raise its defense budget up to 6%, a level unattainable so far by many European countries. So what will be the overall European strategy? Who is leading European defense? And is there a single European leader? To discuss this matter, I'm joined now by Paweł Zerka, Senior Policy Fellow, European Council of Foreign Relations. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Speaking to Kazimierz Łysiak, our TVP World reporter, Manfred Weber called for EU to elect a president of European Union. In his words, it's urgent that European Union has a representative for the whole continent when faced with situations like peace negotiations, for instance. So that confirms a desperate search for EU leader in this new situations. Who could it be, in your mind?
I think that this is a long-term project to think about a president of Europe who would be a natural leader and the one that would constitute an answer to the so-called Kissinger question, which was, whom should I call when I call Europe? I think that today we indeed face a difficult situation where the US and Russia are negotiating above the heads of Europeans and to some extent above the heads of Ukrainians about the peace in Ukraine. And this is why Europeans are desperately looking for someone who could represent them. I don't think that they will easily find one person, but we can already see that Emmanuel Macron, on the one hand, and the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, in many respects, they are already filling that void. And in a way, I can easily imagine a collective European leadership at this moment. European, I mean, not just from the EU, but European more broadly. That's why Keir Starmer is so important.
All right. So Emmanuel Macron and Friedrich Merz also adapting to this shift, apparently. What are, according to you right now, the biggest challenges that EU faces when building a stronger and more unified defense strategy?
So I think that right now we only have a political steer about the willingness to finally spend more on defense, but the devil lies in details, and I think that the most important decisions will still need to be made about how exactly do we finance it and what exactly should this be spent on. And we will see those details in the next couple of weeks. That's why right now there is a flurry of meetings, summits to discuss those different elements. But it's not just about Europe spending on defense. I think that Europe is right now also, in a way, fighting for its own agency. So we need to be able to show that we will not permit the US and Russia to negotiate above our heads about security in Europe, which is most important for us. That's why, for example, today in Paris, there is a summit of military leaders from 30 NATO and non-NATO countries who are supposed to discuss the ways to support Ukraine, including the modalities of an eventual peacekeeping mission in the case that there is a ceasefire or a peace in Ukraine, and when Europeans and other countries who are willing, that's the moment when they would likely send their military to keep that peace in Ukraine. So I think that this meeting in Paris is very important, although it's not country leaders meeting, but just leaders of the military. But they are the best informed about the modalities of what could be could be done. So they will send a double message in a way. They will send a message to Ukraine that Ukraine can still rely on Europe and other global partners, even if their reliance on the US is somewhat in some extent put into question in the past couple of weeks. And another message that this meeting in Paris will send is that Europeans will show to Americans, listen, we are willing to work on the details of how the peacekeeping mission should work, and we Europeans will be crucial in keeping peace in the European continent after this war is over. So you cannot simply negotiate above our heads.
Paris undoubtedly is a very important place on the map, on the European map right now. We are just watching Emmanuel Macron, who takes the lead, apparently, in terms of defense project and all the details in terms of expanding probably peacekeeping forces to Ukraine. So what is the level of support right now for Emmanuel Macron?
What do you mean by you mean the support by the French? I think it's in many ways irrelevant. Emmanuel Macron is going to be president of France until 2027. He cannot be re-elected. He has his powers in France's foreign policy, and it's the prime minister who is occupied with domestic politics. He, of course, as he is not hugely popular, but as any leader in France at the end of their presidency. But I think that what is more important is that the French public is largely supportive of Ukraine. It's clear for them that Russia is an aggressor. So whether Macron is popular or not, liked or not by the French, it's more important that the approach that Macron currently represents is popular among the French public.
Yes, absolutely. My question was about rather a reflection of support in the French society for such a policy conducted by Emmanuel Macron, which is clearly a change.
It is there. And I think that this is sometimes underappreciated in other countries, because of course France used to have many sympathies for Russia. At the beginning of this war, Macron was traveling to Moscow and hoping that he could still convince Putin against attacking Ukraine. But the situation has changed totally in France. So we talk a lot about Zeitenwende, so a watershed moment in Germany, but to my mind, an even bigger Zeitenwende has happened in France over the last 3 years. There were presidential elections in 2022, and they largely disciplined the political class as well as the public opinion in their support for Ukraine. It was politically incorrect to question the fact that it was Ukraine attacked by Russia. And right now, you can hear leaders of the far right, Marine Le Pen, as well as another leader of her party, Jordan Bardella, who are speaking with language that you wouldn't expect from them a couple of years ago, where they say that Donald Trump was brutal in his conversation with Zelensky when they say that it's clear that Russia is an aggressor and that it represents a threat for European and French society. So they are largely talking with the same words as Macron in his
Exactly. So we are observing a grand changement in France. So coming back to Brussels, where the details in financial rearrangements are being discussed right now to fund the defense policy globally in Europe. How can the EU balance supporting Ukraine financially on one hand and maintaining economic stability with its member states?
This is one of the crucial questions, of course, right now, and there are different options. Some countries would prefer to, for example, use the money the Russian money, which has been frozen, and which some claim could be used for financing European defense and support for Ukraine. But France, for example, is a huge opponent many in France are opposing that solution because they fear the negative consequences for economic stability in the Eurozone and the reliability of the banking system. But there are all actually voices among the French government itself who are changing their attitude to that issue. So one option is using Russian frozen assets. Another option is simply to take a bigger national debt, be it in Germany or in other countries. And right now, there is a growing acceptance for the fact that if the spending is supposed to be on defense and security, then it shouldn't be, it should be allowed for member states to take such a debt despite other rules in the European Union. And finally, another solution is to take a European debt in a similar way to what has been done during the COVID pandemic. But again, there are divisions among the European countries on whether this is the best solution. And it seems that especially the next German government would try to avoid it, preferring not to take European commitments again.
Well, financing mechanisms are being considered in Brussels and in Paris, apparently. For instance, the rearmament bank is being discussed, but these are the issues that we are going to ask about here on TVP World and elaborate on them. Thank you so much, Paweł Zerka, Senior Policy Fellow, European Council on Foreign Relations, was our guest this morning. And that resumes this edition of World Talks. Stay tuned to TVP World.